Perfect. Hey, Craig, I'm so excited to do this. Thanks a lot for taking out the time today.
No, I'm excited too. So we'll have to figure out who's more excited, me or you. But I'm ready to go.
Let's do this. To introduce you, let me say a few sentences, and then I would love for you to, kind of edit me and correct me.
Sure.
You are currently the Chief Platform Officer at Scale Venture Partners. Your primary job is to make sure that the company invested by your fund, they go from the founder-led sales to the next level. You kind of give them the methodology, the knowledge, to kind of go to make that transformation, make that jump across the chasm. Is that the right way to explain?
Wow, that was perfect. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
I the only thing I would do is add more time to this podcast. Perfectly said. Done.
Awesome. For the listeners, before that, Craig has been a founder multiple times. He has built a bunch of different kind of companies. The biggest one probably was Topo that you
Hmm.
co-founded with Scott, I believe,
Yep.
and then you sold it to Gartner, and you have been
Hmm.
at Gartner for a little bit of time as a senior analyst.
Yes, actually, I was a distinguished analyst,
Oh,
so
awesome.
very important. But yeah. No, I did that for. No, I'm not even sure I want to keep that. Yes, that's perfectly said. Yeah, I spent you know under 3 years at Gartner and
Yeah, yeah.
built Topo for 7.5.
Yeah, yeah. So the interesting part here for me is you have really seen the sales tech from, being in its nappies all the way to wherever it is today, and I cannot wait to dive in. Let's start with there, right? How did you get into sales? What prompted you to get into the sales as a career?
Well, I would say that my life's taken a lot of twists and turns, right? I mean, look, like if you're talking back when I was a young man, I mean, liberal arts major, you just got to figure out kind of where your skill set lies, and that's where I started. But when I first became sort of a speaker on the circuit and writing content, that actually was primarily focused on marketing. That was when we were at Tippett, and it's a funny story, like Scott, who was the CEO, founder of that as well, was like, we were a media company, said, "Hey, you got to start a blog." And I'm like, "What the hell's a blog?" This is like 2008 or something.
Wow.
And we were a marketing company. We were selling demand gen. So, I just started to really dig in on marketing. And, I spoke at the first Marketo show. That's how OG I was then. And, so my life then was all marketing. And then, when we started Topo, it was marketing. And then we just started going heavily into sales. So it's like, there's been a balance, but I'd say, and then, at Gartner, I was a distinguished analyst in the sales practice. So I've spent now sort of the last, call it, 6 or 7 years really digging in, but I always kind of had both sets in my experience. And but in terms of like Martech had taken off when, for Topo, sales tech was the new kid on the block. So that was like perfect timing for me to take the experience that I'd seen on what had happened with Martech, and the amount of time that I was spending working with sales teams as the sales tech sort of revolution came onto the scene. I was there from the start. And so, I would say that this last sort of period of time in my life has been a lot of sales and a lot of sales tech.
That's interesting. So at Topo, you were also the sales guy for your own company, right? As a co-founder, you also did a fair amount of sales for yourself.
Yeah, I mean that, as a founder, this, man, you got
Yeah.
to do, Scott and I had a rule, which was that no matter what, no matter like how busy you were that week, you had to do 10 calls with
Right.
customers or someone in the ecosystem. But yeah, I mean, like the at Topo, even though there was a product, it was still people that we were selling. And so I probably did 10, 15 sales calls a week and help get deals across the line. So yeah, I haven't lost my touch, man. I mean, I'll tell you now, I mean, I'm working at a venture firm, but if anybody needs help closing a deal, I'd be happy to get on, because that's the kind of stuff
Jump on.
I love. I love that, man.
Yeah, I saw one of your LinkedIn posts that exactly talked about those 10 customer calls a week. I just
Yeah.
wish more founders see it because, I think most of the startups don't win because they don't jump into enough customer conversations, the CEOs or
Yeah.
the founders, right? So, is that something that you also tell your founders at your fund?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do. I feel like, look, I mean, if even if you just want to really understand what's happening in the market, you got to jump on calls. And the other thing too that I tell people, it's not the same, like market research or, hey, I just want your feedback's not the same as trying to talk about your business in the context of asking them for money. That's really where you really learn what they're looking for. Because in a soft setting, someone could tell you anything. It's like, well, here's what the market really wants. Really? So if I said, great, if I get that done, would you pay me money? That's actually what you really want to be able to understand. It sounds cold. It's not. Like, you're still listening to them, but like in the context of a sales call, in the context of something where you want to move towards some kind of business relationship, the learnings are deeper that way. So that's something I tell people all the time, right? Because again, like I said, in the soft setting, you might not hear the things that actually the decisions you really need to make to move the needle on the business. The other thing too is like, in my pod, I had a call with a guy named David Politis, and he did something a little different, but pretty, I think he said he's going to do 150 customer calls in 3 months or something. And part of the benefit that he brought up, which is the same thing I would say, is like, if someone, I had to see my thumbs up, if someone in the organization said, look, here's what I read here, or here's what I think is happening, he could say, I talked to 150 customers, and here's what's really happening with our customers.
Right.
There's too much value there, and it's amazing what happens. We just had this other part to that, which is like, only good things happen when you talk to customers, and customers being abroad, same in your market and those kinds of things. So yeah, no, I tell people all the time, I mean, if you want, it's an amazing tip. It goes a long way. It's just like, I mean, you should just do it as long as you can. So
you come in for from your fund's perspective, you invest and you come in, and the company has some form of a sales happening with the founder taking the lead, and then you are kind of going to help them to move that to the next level. What stage would you say a founder has to sell for sure? And then what stage is when you tell the startups to move to the next stage?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, winning is the most important thing. And typically, if you have your company, the best seller is going to be the founder. What we have to move them from leading the sale to being a part of the sale. And that shouldn't ever end. I mean, Mark Benioff still helps close deals, right? Like, it just, that just depends on time, but he's not prospecting the deal, logging the stuff in the CRM, putting together the proposal. Those things should happen actually when you get to 3 or more salespeople. You should start to make that transition. Will the founder still be part of selling? Absolutely. Like, that is that's how you close business. It's incredible. Like, I feel like the founders just need to understand how like tied they are to the brand of the company, how important they are to the customer. But in terms, like, founder-led sales in many ways really means they're doing everything soup to nuts. We have to get all the operational and sales process things out of their hands as soon as we can. And then are they on every call until there's like 5 or more reps? I mean, I'd like to say no, but the answer is probably yes, if they're winning, right? So we want to start to transition that. But look, by the time you have a sales leader, we should be bringing in the founder to win deals, to talk to really big customers or really important customers. And so that at that point, we're moving you into out of founder-led sales, like literally, between Series A and Series B. By that time, you want to be able to show that you can do the same thing metrics-wise, some growth, key growth numbers, whether that's revenue lift, pipeline lift, and all the things that sort of go along with that, using an operation that has been built outside of the founder 2 quarters in a row. So that's that from A to B, that's a critical time where we're not only making that transition, but we want to prove that it works. Because, that's the other thing too, is like part of that founder led to a go-to-market machine transition is like, we have to make sure that the founder is not the only person who can sell this thing. Right. And that often, that actually takes time. And you have to be able to do all this in 18 to 22 months. So like that's
Yeah.
the challenge there, and that's the big thing to go that everyone needs to be able to go to.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the founder, like I'm a founder now, I do everything.
I
To
know.
your
Get out
soup
there,
to
man. What
nuts.
do you do? I see you. I see you, man. You're pitching. You're on this podcast. I get it, man. That's life.
Yep, doing everything it takes, right? But as a founder, I have the ability say, so there are so many things. I have prospecting to do. I have to get on
Mhm.
calls. I have to close them, and then I have to do the post sales, like onboarding and support and all of that,
Yeah.
right? So from your standpoint, if I as a founder has to hire like my next person so that I get some leverage, would you hire one SDR, two SDR, one account executive, or like a post sales person, like a customer success person? Who do you hire first?
I only get one.
Let's start with one, and then you can tell the second one too.
Well, look, I mean, first of all, it's very hard to learn anything with one of anything, right? So, like if someone says, and by the way, it also depends in your case, honestly, where the pain lies. Like, for example, if we could solve a lot of problems in your life and free you up to drive more deals, then a CS person might be the right thing, right?
Hmm.
Because we do have to make sure, as you know, customers are happy along that process.
Right.
But like, look, I believe that you have to work fast and sequentially for the three key areas. One is, can you build pipeline? You have to prove that to yourself. One SDR is not going to be able to do that. You have to do two or more, because you have to be able to have like not be dependent on whether the person's any good or not. And by the way, if you only have one, you don't know if it's the
Right.
person or anything. So like it's better to hire two.
Yeah.
You can get away with one AE, but the same rule applies, right? Like, which is like, we don't know anything because there's only one. Oftentimes you'll get lucky,
Hmm.
but oftentimes you won't, and you won't know anything, right? And so in general, it's best to hire in tranches of two. You should probably, most people like, oh, I'm sorry about that. Most people will logically hire the sales reps first, right? And then sort of put all the surrounding things around them. But look, it just, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with
Hmm.
anyway. I just, the one thing, just hiring one is really hard. But in
Right.
reality, I mean, imagine this. So there's this one portfolio company where this is brilliant, right? I'm like, I didn't even have to tell him this. He's a
Hmm.
pipeline machine, the founder, and he brought in two SDRs so we can impart all that, get them going, so that we're just filled with pipeline. We break we're breaking the machine there.
Wow.
And now you could call an AE, and it's like, hey man, you get all of it. Like the pot of gold. They're hiring two. It's like there's a pot of gold every month. We're a startup, but we've got pipeline flowing to you, and it's good. And the founder can close it. So it actually worked out in that sequence. Now those things happen very quickly. It was like within 3 months. But look, like I said, most people will hire sales first. It's fine, right? But it's just be careful hiring one of anything.
Understood. Yeah, Jason Lemkin, founder of SaaStr, he famously says the same thing. Never hire one SDR. Always hire two SDRs. Like, even account executive, honestly, there is probably, you are the account executive, so there is some level of comparison that you can make with the new AE. If
Yeah.
there is, you have closed like, I don't know, 800K of revenue yourself, there is some comparison you can make, but it's difficult to compare a founder and AE too. So I agree, it should be like in pairs. That makes sense.
Yeah, and by the way, if someone
Uh-huh.
like you who knows how to close business, and we can build everything around the AE first, which is not the instinct of most people, but you can, like you would be able to onboard customers and you'd be able to drive pipeline, actually finding a great AE and bringing them in there, then you can just focus on closing business with them. So in the meantime, if you can fill that gap while we build the pipeline building exercise with SDRs, and we are able to onboard, we can actually hire the AEs as the second or third set of hiring and be really successful there, because everything else is in place. And
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, one of the successful things that I've had in my second company is I brought in like an account executive, but then the person managed the deal for me, but I was still the, let's say,
yeah,
solutions engineer on that call,
right,
where
right.
I drove the call, but the proposal, the agreement, the follow-ups, everything was taken care by this account executive. But I'm kind
Cool.
of doing the thing, but I don't have to worry about anything else, right? So I could do like four of them every day. It doesn't
That's
matter
great.
because I'm not doing the follow-up. So that has worked for me in the past, which is
That's
probably
great.
what we are trying to do with Docket too.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so taking a slightly different route. In one of our earlier conversations, you said this very interesting thing about a statistics that everybody uses all the time. Um, we hear this: 70% of the buying decision is done before a buyer talks to the salesperson or submit a form or whatever. Right? This is a very famous statistics that's
Yeah.
out there, which I believe first came from Serious Decisions.
Mhm.
And you said that you don't believe in it, right? I'm I'm not saying I believe or not believe in it, but I would love to hear why you don't believe in it. Before even that, where is the 70% in your opinion, and why don't you believe it?
Well, it's funny. I had to spend years tap dancing around that stat because I didn't like it, but it was from a competitor, and I wasn't gonna bash them.
Yeah.
But look, if you go to anybody, like when I walk into the Gap, well, I don't walk it. Just don't judge me. I'm just using a store. I don't go in the Gap. But if I walk in, this really nice person will walk up and say, "Can I help you today?" I'm like, "No, thank you." Right?
Sure.
And then 2 minutes later, I'm like, "Hey, where are the gray sweatshirts?" I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you ask someone, their first instinct is they don't want to do anything with sales. And the data says that, and it's like, why do we even need data for that? Of course not. Like, I mean, and the value being driven by salespeople over the years has been not enough for us to actually desire to have that experience. So to me, that data always came from there. The truth is, like, if you think about the historicals, like that data point came out and it actually was just a rallying cry for marketing so that they could do quote unquote nurturing of content that had nothing to do with the product. And allegedly, after they read all of our marketing for 6 months, they'd come back and be like, "I'm ready to buy you." The reality is, in my opinion, that it's more confusing than ever. If you want to take that 70% number and lock in on it, buyers are coming in 70% more confused than ever,
Okay.
because there's too much information out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've never loved that number. And by the way, if you took a historical view, Sirius comes out with that number, whatever it was, like 60, 70, whatever. And by the way, the data is correct. They're not going to put bad data out there. If you ask buyers, that's what they're going to say. If you look at the reality, marketing took this big swing here and said, we're going to quote unquote nurture people. Well, guess what? At the same time, we saw the biggest boon of outbound SDRs in the history of tech.
Right.
It was like, oh, I read predictable revenue. And you know why? It's because it worked better to go get to the buyers before they were 70% down the buying cycle.
Right.
Now we're in a different time. That is true. Like the outbound stuff's working less. But the thing is that the buyers now, it's very difficult to buy. So yes, I want to buy anonymously. I do. I understand that. Yes, we've seen on the sort of per user basis, like the product led works great, right? Because they could do all this stuff and just go try it. But
Right.
think about that. Even they're still just trying it. I mean, that doesn't mean you're 70% down the side and you know what you want, right? Like, so it's actually we have to sort of take everything back and say, yes, I understand. I'm a buyer too. I don't want to spend 70% of my time with a sales rep. I get that. That can change though, by the way, when we fix sales. But think about this if you're in SaaS, you're competing with your really specific micro segment. You're competing with the entire sales tech market or whatever market you're in, and you're competing with the entire SaaS market because budgets are tight now.
Absolutely.
It's just, and all three things are marketing to your buyer, and all three things are making things get really murky inside, in the buyer's head. The other thing too is we're creating all of this valuable content, which I'm in favor of. I create valuable content. But what we've seen is that the buyers actually are gravitating more towards really wanting to understand the product earlier. They just can't. That's this missing piece, and that's the other confusing thing on the 70% down the buying cycle is they're going to read your content along the way, right? But and even if they see all the reviews and get this peer stuff, the buyers are telling us, they need to see this thing firsthand really early on. And I think, that's part of this sort of 70% confusion. I think at the end of the day, they want to be anonymous, but they don't get the information they need to truly be 70% down the buying process.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that number by itself is probably not wrong, but the survey, it's a prompting question. If you ask a buyer is going to say, yeah, I want to be anonymous. But in reality, they are confused and they still need help. I want to double click on one thing very quickly that you said. I think you said it twice. You said that sales is not delivering the value that it used to deliver. And then you also said that once we fix sales, they would want to talk to sales. What do you mean?
Well, what I mean is like if a sell, I can't put a time frame on this. And by the way, I'm not one of those old folks. I'm old, but that thinks sales was better back in the days. Because if you think about the pendulum switch, back in the days in tech, sales they had the power because all the information was with them. If you wanted to know about a relational database, you had to call Oracle and you had to talk to a sales rep. So like that was a power shift, right? Then the power shift did switch more. The buyers have more power than ever. That is a true statement. And then we had this sort of period of time in SaaS in particular where you could just sell the crap out of everything. I mean, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. I think that's the same. It was nuts.
Yeah.
And we didn't add value. We really didn't have to, right? And now we're sort of in this third period here where the buyers are more confused than ever. They don't want to talk to you. And the reason is because sales or the team that's helping sell doesn't provide enough value to help like de-risk, to help uncloud their vision, to work with them in a way that allows them to feel really comfortable. We've talked about trusted advisor for a long time, but it was all talk because you didn't need it. You could just go try to win the deal. Now you really do. And once that change happens where we are adjusting the teams that sell to the customer today are more about truly providing value to them, even if it means telling them you should go to my competitor. I know everyone's like, oh my God, why would they do? Well, come on, if you have an ideal customer profile and you understand the use case that's successful in your business, then you want to do that. These are the kind of things that we have to do now. The other thing, by the way, I'd mention on today's buyer, risky to buy stuff now. It's not, everyone's confused. It's not that they can't buy stuff. It's hard to buy stuff. Many of them don't know how to buy stuff anymore because it got all scrambled at their house. But the third thing is that when you do buy something, you're on the hook for it to be successful. And that is part of why we need to be able to put these teams together that can become a trusted advisor for the buyer. If you do that, then they come back to relying on you, the person. They need a partner here that they can trust that will allow them to feel really comfortable in order to buy. And so that's what I'm talking about. I probably said a lot more, probably repeated myself 2 or 3 times, but it is the reality of what's happening today.
Yeah, no, I think I fully agree. Basically, what you're saying is sales had a time when sales was the trusted advisor for the information that people were gaining, and then 2020, 2021 happened where it was easy to make the sell thanks to the zero interest rates that were out there, and now it has moved back. But we are still in a little bit of a hangover of the 2021, I'd say, which is where you're saying, I don't know how many years it would take for all of us to kind of recognize. But I think it'll happen fast because sales is very tough today, especially for startups. It is super tough given that the same thing that you mentioned, buyers are on the hook if they buy something. And then they would much rather buy from like a Salesforce rather than a startup, even though the startup thing is probably much better, or at least suited for the need.
Right. If they buy it all.
Yeah, exactly. If they buy at all. So you also mentioned it in your thread about the PLG's influence on the sales-led process. Basically, the buyers coming into the call and starting to ask questions right from the first call, being very tech savvy in their buying process. This was another thing that you mentioned during our call. So how do you think that has changed the sales-led process, and how do you think the company should change their behavior to cater to the buyer's changes?
Yeah. So let's add that to the list, right? Which is like when we think of something like product led, we assume that it's actually how we think of ourselves. That's our go-to-market motion, which is they come in, they get a free trial, they can start to use the product. By the way, I love that go-to-market motion. It's great.
Sure.
It scales. It's like it's beautiful. But for many, it won't satisfy the entire revenue thing. But the most important thing about the PLG and the learning is to actually take it, not think of it from our lens, but think of it the buyer's lens. What we're seeing from the buyer is that they are product led. And you know this, when you talk to enterprise sales reps today, we got to show them the product like out of the gate now.
Yeah.
So when we think product led, we always think of product led growth. That's us. But actually, it's really a product led buyer. And that we're seeing, I mean, I'm not saying you exist, but you are helping with that, right? Which is like, in the old days, man, we talk about, it's like the enterprise software person would be like, whoa, I can't show you anything right now until, I get to spend 3 calls with you in interrogation. And then, the enterprise sales rep would say, here's my SC, call me when the PO's ready. And then that was kind of it was a good life. But now you can't do that. The buyer's product led, for them to really think about it, they're coming in totally, it's so confusing.
Yeah,
they're hearing
they have consumed a lot of information, which is very confusing.
Yeah, totally. And then you get like, if you're in your highly technical sales or places where they have experienced tech buyers, they've been burned. And they've been, they can never get the answers they needed along the way. At the end, they sort of sometimes made a bet, even though that question wasn't it. They're not playing that. They're like, let me see it. I got to see it. And it's got to look good for my use case. And so the buyer's product led, that's it. That's what I mean is like, nobody should think I'm in favor of product led for your buyer. If that's how they are going to consume it, it's great. But that's because they're product led buyers. And there's a lot of them now, as you know, in complex deals, the SEs are getting involved like on first call.
Mm-hmm.
First call.
Yeah, just we are trying to not have that because SEs in the first call.
Yes, you're trying to help with that. Yes, that's right. That's right. Right now, it is a people-centric game.
Absolutely. No, we also observe this. The buyers are asking very, very deep questions right from the first day. Also, the flip side is also true, right? From a seller standpoint, back in, let's say, 1995 or 2000, the amount of knowledge that you could have gained of a buyer was limited. Today, you can go to their website, you can look at SimilarWeb, you can look at ZoomInfo, you can learn a lot about the exact persona, the person, and the company. You can come prepared, and you can limit your discovery to 5 to 7 minutes rather than doing like 1.5 hours of discovery in 3 calls.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So if we kind of, move things to like 2024, given where we are, it's obviously a super tough time to sell, especially for startups. You work with a lot of revenue orgs at different startups, and you actually mentioned about a startup that is really kicking ass in generating pipeline. What is working for these guys? What do you think is working right now?
Well, it depends. You're talking about in terms of how we're selling.
Yeah, the channels that are working, or the methodologies that are working. Like, what do you think a startup should do in 2024 to try to move the needle?
Well, I do think so. I'm going to mix between tactical and strategic. So one is from a marketing perspective. So let's say it's you're doing the right thing. You're on this podcast. You have to write on LinkedIn. And you got to write a minimum of 2 to 3 days a week. Here's why. Because when you do get on sales calls, you are the person that they see that you have this new idea and this new mission you're bringing to market, and that makes you desirable to go talk to. You have to set that up somewhere where your buyers are. And for most people, that will be LinkedIn. Okay. Now, all the other things come along with it. People will ask you to speak, people will do but like, let's just focus on, as you're a startup, you have to build your profile as someone that a buyer can't wait to talk to. So that's one thing. That's on the founder side. Okay. And by the way, that will drive awareness in a way that allows you to compete from awareness perspective against competitors with big marketing budgets. It's a place where like you can fight the good fight and get out to the public. So you're just asking for things you can go do. That's one thing. You have to come in with a reputation, but also that helps drive pipeline, because things have changed a lot. We could go for hours, by the way, on the marketing side on pipeline and those types of things. The most important thing from a sales perspective has been, one, identifying your ideal customer profile. You have, and it's old school for me, I'm like beating the old drum, but it's true. If you look at the people that are organizations that are successful, they understand who they need to sell to, and they've put limits around that. Because that way you can really dig deep and understand. It's not a crapshoot every time. I mean, by the way, everyone thinks that's a vertical thing. It's not. That's not necessarily. It could be anything. It depends on your business, right? But like, you do want to be able to say, look, here's who we sell to all the time. Now let's understand them. Because as you said, if you have that baseline understanding of what's happening in your business, then these things where these tools where you can go on, I don't know, Perplexity or whatever, and go type in the company, you're going to be able to understand what it's telling you, and you're going to be able to sell fast. So that's one thing. I think so like who figuring out really who you sell to, I think is really important. The second part is like in sales call, hand-to-hand combat. It's tough, but like, if you have a good understanding of your market, you can act fast. The most important thing is to identify the use case as quickly as possible and make sure you can solve it. Now that there's a lot of things that go with that, right? One is like tying that use case to strategic business objectives. Like, can you make this important? Because the thing that I think gets misunderstood is I could go to said person, get their use case, and nobody else in the organization cares. I've seen a lot, not in my portfolio, but just generally, I've seen that over time. It's like, you go to a forecast call at a company as a third-party observer, you go in, they're like, oh, and this guy's got this big problem. It's like, but yeah, but does the organization care? The answer is no, right? The second part of that use case is when you demo product, you have to show them that use case, not what you're trying to show. Right. And you could do that. They could do that asynchronously, or you could do it online. And by the way, if it's a sales rep, that can be able to do that, you have to kill the questions that they have technically against their use case out of the gate. They don't want to wait. They don't want to spend time with you, those things. So you see that. Look, that is the one advantage to startups, is that they're so tribal that they do understand the product typically better than the 250th Absolutely. Rep at Snowflake, right? So like, they will have that advantage, but like, we want to be able to make them feel really comfortable with their use case overall. And then the third is just like, I was saying before, is like, can you de-risk that solving that use case for them? And that's going to come in different flavors based on your business. So those are kind of the big things that, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the reality of the buying environment is you got to get technical up front. That doesn't mean you don't do good business discovery. You have to, otherwise you won't win the deal. So you have to be able to combine both. As you said, you got to work fast, but you got to make the most of that one sales call. That first one. You're not going to get the second one. That's the thing. If you look at conversion rates, getting the second one is the hard thing. So how can we make the most of the first? And you won't make the most of the first if you ask them what keeps them awake at night, or you open up the product and you say, here's the home screen, right? We gotta get as far as we can very early on in the process with them. And those are the things I think are important.
That's super interesting. So basically you're saying, just like you optimize every part of your pipeline, you have to go optimize your first call to a point where you maximize the number of second calls that you get. Whether it is discovery, whether it is demo, you just need to optimize it to a point where you're getting the second call. That's super, super important.
Yeah, John, I just did a pod with John Barris, and he's like, here's the sign you just did a terrible job. The buyer at the end says, well, I need some time to digest this. Well, dude, like, you're going to have to help them digest it in the 30 to 60 minutes that you have on that first call. You know what I mean? Right. So, but you put it in a good way, which is like, oftentimes people they worry about pipeline and the messaging to get pipeline. They train them on how to give a demo, which, as you know, that's fraught with peril too. But they're not looking at the key gating moments in the sales process. And key moment number one right now is that rare time you get the first call. And what are you going to do about it?
Understood. Makes total sense. So, and you're seeing the whole thing evolving, and the AI is also evolving a little bit. I'm sure you're seeing that. So from a B2B go-to-market motion standpoint, do you have a big bet that you would put on AI? Here is where AI is going to make the biggest difference in the upcoming months or years.
Well, I think in the near term, AI as a key enabler is the key, because we're not getting rid of humans.
Yeah,
What we're
100%.
trying to do is eliminate all the things that keep them from being able to add value. So like, and that's to me the key to AI. So like, what you and I are talking about, like, we want to be able to answer a question credibly on, if we go back to that first call thing, we want to be
Yeah.
able to answer that question credibly. What happens today when I get a question I don't know? A, I look bad, but B, then I got to go into Slack. I got to do all these things. Like, can we eliminate that? You talked about preparing for a call. 6 minutes? That's great. It used to take 3 hours and you still had no idea what you're doing. Right. So like, can we take, can we enable, same with messaging? I think everyone is worried about at a certain point the robots will take over. I'm not going to predict that. I don't know when. In the near term, we're enablers, right? So like, can we provide ideas for messaging that allow us to work faster? Because everyone's asking me, it's like, look, man, I write emails all the time. It takes me forever to be relevant. But AI can get you to relevance faster. So you see, it's an enablement. Right now, it's a beautiful rep and manager enablement part of the infrastructure. It's making a huge difference in time. If we take all the things we talked about, our ability for the humans to be more valuable to the buyer, it requires that we give them more time back in a valuable way. Because I think the first iteration of sales tech was like, oh, we'll give them time back, but we weren't adding any value necessarily. Now with AI, we can add value. We don't just give them the picture of what's happening in a business. We make recommendations on what you might say. Right. And, we don't just, there's so many examples of that, but like, that's the key, is AI as an enabler is actually not just providing visibility, so to speak, or anything. It's actually taking away mundane tasks and actually making recommendations so that people can not just work faster, but work better. So that's really how I'm thinking about it right now.
Got you. That makes sense. This is awesome. So, Craig, I want to switch gears into a little bit of a rapid fire set of questions.
Okay.
Just give the answer, whatever comes to mind, and then give like, I don't know, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, or maybe not, depending on how you feel.
Sure.
Starting off with, what is a RevStack tool that you really like today?
Oh, you setting me up on that? I got
No. I would love for you to say docket, but like let's keep that for a future one. But
and I've got my
yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I do have, I do serve a portfolio set, so everyone will call me a homer on this, but I am right now, like, so we're investors in Reggie, right? And like, that's another enablement piece. I've been just using it to help with my emails to get stuff out the door. That's a easy one. So that's to get really specific. I think I will say this right now. It's been use case specific in sales tech, and I think that's great. Like, they might use you guys because that's their biggest pain. They might use Reggie because that's their biggest pain, or whatever. I think people are making way better decisions. Now, of course, I know you want everyone to buy. That'll happen with time. Right now, you have stickier customers who are making better decisions about what they buy from you because it's use case dependent. And that's actually good for sales tech because we will eliminate the shelfware problem that happened over the run up.
Yeah. By the way, I'm a huge fan of Reggie here. Sri is great. Matt is great. So huge shout out to the whole
Reggie. Good. All right, we're good. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's great.
Yeah, it's an amazing tool. Yes, absolutely. So now the next set of things, I'm going to give you some options, and then you just pick one of the option, and then tell me why you picked that option. That's all. So the first one is cold call. Is it dead or not dead?
Not dead.
Okay. And do you think everybody, like every 6 months, somebody will kill it on LinkedIn? Do you think it'll die, or do you think it is really converting even today?
Well, look, I think what people are really saying is the cold call, the way we used to do it before, that's dead. That for sure is dead, right? I mean, like, you can't do just a spray and play out there. It's just not going to work. There's too much stuff, and with the new tools coming out, it's going to destroy it. So the flight to quality is the key here. So the people that you asked about what's working, cold outreach is working in two ways. One is, can you get relevant in your first outreach? And number two is marketing helping you by triangulating around the potential prospects, so there's some mind share before you go in. And that use case, which is an ABM use case, that's a real one, and that works. Cold calling, as it's the sort of traditional without any relevance, that's gone, dead. It's dead today. It'll be worse in a year.
Perfect. So some form of a signal-based cold calling will absolutely continue to be more important, but the absolute random cold calling is probably dead. Interesting. So I'm a startup who needs my first set of customers. Do I go with paid ads and marketing, or do I go cold outbound campaigns? If I have to
Oh man, it's binary? Shoot.
Yes.
Well, I think you're gonna have to do cold outbound. I hate to say it, both are better, but isn't that funny? We just killed it and now we're bringing it back for this. But like paid ads, I guess if you have, there are use cases where the paid ad play actually work. I just met with a company pre-Series A, killing it on Instagram and Facebook. And they're young growth hackers. They're just killing it. So maybe if you have a growth hack mindset, you can do things that I don't understand. But you're going to have to knock on doors to get going on your first couple customers. I would try to make them warm outbound though through introductions, but we can talk about that another time.
Sounds good. The next one, the impact of AI on SDR motion. I think you kind of answered it, but is it dead, or will in the future SDR's numbers might come down, but will be more effective with AI? Where do you think?
Reduce number, but more effective with AI. So I think inbound SDRing will be in AI. The bots will take that over because it's very formulaic and very templatized and very workflow heavy. I think the key on the flight to quality will be, can it enable better messaging to the right customers? And that's going to be, AI is going to help us a lot if used correctly, because it also could be a weapon of mass destruction. If you're using it to spam still, then that's not going to work. The key is, like, can you use it for the flight to quality, flight to relevancy?
Perfect. Got it. The next one is, first hire in a startup. Am I hiring an account executive with 2 years experience, or am I hiring a VP of sales?
I would go AE with 2 years experience.
Perfect. I think you touched upon it a little bit, but this is a regular question with a lot of founders, and a lot of people make, in my opinion as well, the mistake of hiring a super senior person from a big brand as the first hire, and kind of struggle to make that person work. So I agree with you. Is there anything that you want to add as a couple of sentences, or?
Yeah, we talked about it. I like
Perfect.
it. That was a lead in. You got me on the first. I knew where you're going on that one. All right.
Perfect. Trade shows. You startups spend money, take the booth, or don't spend money, hustle, get the business cards and follow up?
Hustle.
I'm
not seeing, like, look, to win at the trade booth game right now, you have to do a lot more than just the booth. Now, are there examples of where that worked? Yeah, like I just did an interview on my podcast. The guy did a chicken wing eating contest at his booth and destroyed everyone else out there in the market. So in that use case, yeah. But like, look, I follow, like, Garth Moulton, the founder of Jigsaw. His favorite story when they started is every week, because they sold the marketers, he would have 2 people and they'd go to every trade show in the Bay Area, and he'd send them in and say, go give our business card out, ask them, how many leads they think they're going to get to the trade show, and how many, whether that will lead them to their number, and tell them to call them. That was trade show hustle. They just went in and they met everyone they could that was available to them, and they just killed it with trade shows, but not in the traditional way.
Perfect. The next one is simpler. Marketing. Keep to traditional channels, LinkedIn, Google Ads, etc., or go TikTok, YouTube, Reels, video content, etc. Again, first startup, early stage, where do you go?
I would keep to traditional, but not. I think it's an all-in on LinkedIn right now with testing across some of the cooler channels. Like, is Instagram a traditional, or YouTube, like Meta stuff, products?
I think I'll put that in the newer one because it's a different format. It's a video format, mostly.
Okay. All right, let me answer this in two ways. One is right
Yeah.
now, if you don't know what to do, go in on LinkedIn and you don't even pay. Just go in there and just do your thing. Here's the thing though, is that what we will see is some growth hacking startup with a bunch of kids in Brooklyn in their apartment. They're going to come at you with from Meta, TikTok, like they're going to figure out ways to get to your market that we haven't. But like if you don't have those chops, you're going to fail down there. Like you can't have some buttoned up VP of sales on TikTok, talking to the market there. So like the safest place right now is LinkedIn. That's where everyone is, and you can write to your market there. But I
Right.
can tell you, if you have the ability to sort of play around on the growth hack side, I would do that on top of once you have sort of a stable, more traditional channel that you're working. Google Ads, though, I'm not getting a ton of really great feedback on Google Ads right now. So I would just go all
Interesting.
in on LinkedIn.
Got you. And in my experience, I think for me, TikTok is actually better than even YouTube. I see more people engaging on TikTok. I get more followers per video on TikTok. Again, it's not a success for me to say that, okay, it's certainly working. I'm pretty much all in on LinkedIn myself, but just my 2 cents there. Last
Great.
question, marketing content. Do you say create a lot of short form, bite-sized content, small
Yes.
videos, small posts, or deep content?
Short form, bite-sized content. I mean, I do a podcast right now, but the most mileage we get is from the short form, bite-sized content we create from it. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll actually make short form content of this podcast as well, and we put it on LinkedIn and other places too.
Awesome.
Yeah, Craig, this was amazing. I wanted to double click on more places. We initially said we will do it for 30-35 minutes. It's already 46. I really appreciate you taking the time. This
Yeah.
was awesome, and I hope to do it with you once again, or
All
more
right.
times again.
Anytime. I appreciate it.
Take care, Craig. Cheers.